Okay, next up, it's the last one of the day here in the Security Dome. I would like to welcome Zsolt Balog to the stand, who is going to talk, tell you about 7 steps to secure a SaaS platform. Thank you, Zsolt.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining. When I started working on information security, I entered information security on my title on LinkedIn. And then there was a LinkedIn data breach, of course. And what that meant is that I'm getting so many emails from all the software vendors every day. And I get this is true for you as well. I just counted. Today, I got 5 messages telling me what to do to have the best and most secure world everywhere. Today, I want to share you 7 steps, 7 knowledge bits, which we have learned, which are not done by these vendors, which you couldn't figure out by simply just looking at and understanding what you should do. So before getting to start, you need to know a little bit more about Liferay, because you might not know Liferay well enough. So Liferay is a project started in 2000. It started as an open source portal project. It's a huge project. You can imagine that we had, in several years, the highest number of commits on GitHub. So we have a lot of code. Our 7-zipped bundle is 900 megabytes big, zipped. So you can imagine that we have a lot of features. We have CMS, low-code platform, and then we have workflows, all what enterprises need for the digital experience which we are providing. We are very proud that our platform can be extended very heavily. You can almost replace anything in our product, which actually causes a lot of problems for our security, right? Because customers can basically run code in our system. So we had to figure out ways to do so. And I talk a lot about our customers. So our customers are big corporations, governments, manufacturing companies, and mostly finance and insurance. So just examples, A1, European Space Agency, Vodafone, O2, Bosch, HP, and Airbus are all of our customers, and I just scraped our site for a minute this morning. So you can see that we have a huge software stack, and we are open source. And I actually want to challenge everyone before starting, because I want to announce that we have a new private bug bounty program. So if you are red teaming or if you are a security researcher, this is a new program. I want to emphasize, and we have budget to share with you if you would like to help us. So you can find me here, find me on LinkedIn or X or wherever, on all the channels, and then we would like to invite you. And please participate, because I think that's a really good project. I have just heard on previous presentations that it's really easy to work with Java code because you can decompile, but we are open source, so you don't even need to worry about decompiling. So let me get started with step 1, which was kind of obvious, and we actually knew really well. So the story started that Tuesday morning we got a message to our security mail list, and this was the contents. I was okay passing it, but after a few minutes, our team started buzzing, and I didn't know what it was. But then they, of course, decrypted the message, and basically it turned out that a security researcher, and we were happy that it was a researcher, actually could get a remote code execution using our build systems. So this was the essence of the message, and it got us frightened a little bit. Before I get into details, I wanted to share that I'm using dogs as images next to my slides. There are no obvious reason to do that. It's just we couldn't figure out the copyright around machine-generated images yet, so it's safer to use free dog images, and I think they are funny. So we have identified that 500 employees of Liferay. We have more than 1,400 employees right now, but 500 technical employees might be affected if our build system is vulnerable to remote code execution. We had no idea what the problem was. We just saw that somebody could run remote code execution while we were running a build, one of our engineers. And we support our software stack for 7 years. Imagine that we have to figure out that a build system which we wrote 7 years ago is causing the problem, or the build system which we are using today is causing that problem. Because we have support engineers who are still building the 7-year-old software day to day. So what was our obvious choice here? We had to tell everybody to stop working. We announced it to everyone because we had no idea what is causing this problem and how we could address this. We started the debugging process and looked at EDR logs, but still there was no clue. I just did a calculation. Basically, it costs us in salaries $22,000 per hour to shut down the engineering. For us, it means basically we are losing a car every hour. So what we could do is that we quickly work with the software engineering department, and then we actually could move everybody to use local caches before we could reach that employee who was actually hacked. It turned out that they have copied out some parts of our code from the build system, but they forgot to copy the configuration, which ensured that the right repositories would be fetched. So basically, it was not a big incident, and we could tell everybody to start working. After 5 hours, so it's 5 cars, of course, yeah, we got lucky with this. And what I wanted to emphasize here is that we got lucky because we just formalized our incident management processes before, and we stole a lot of things from firefighting. So we could actually do a very efficient job of communicating to the whole company, and also the company understood. So we knew that we need to use the conditions, actions, needed reports, and we need to show them every hour, and everybody was calm. Everybody knew what they had to do, and we survived this incident very easily. So step 1, I would say that please have your incident management process ready as soon as possible and test it if you can. So step 2 is obvious, but I also had to include it. And the reason why I'm including it is you need to know a little bit about my background. So I joined security quite recently in the past 2 or 3 years. I don't count since COVID. But I worked for Liferay for 14 years now. I was leading the Hungarian office, and this is an important piece of information later. And I was leading global technical support. But there was an unexpected change in management, and the C-level, the board basically asked me to become the vice president of DevSecOps before actually DevSecOps was cool. And the reason for this was that they know Conway's law. Basically, your communication structure defines your product and your services. And the board knew that we want to start our SaaS journey, and we wanted to make sure that we take security seriously while we are building out our SRE practices, our DevOps practices in the system. So then, I was working as a general manager. I knew a lot about even marketing, but I was also working on technology at the same time because I was building technical support. And then, what's next? So I was really thankful for the team because they were giving me so much training right away. And they actually spent days training me on security, but then we actually had to figure out where we are. So what we could do is that we used OWASP DevSecOps maturity model, and we started to go through it. And well, it took a lot of time. I think we spent like 3 days, full day trying to figure out. But then the conversation goes, this is the first item on the list. I guess you couldn't read. Define build process. Okay, of what? We have a build system which builds the build system. You know, it's like you need to have a good understanding of your whole organization, especially if you are coming from a very old open source environment and you want to make changes to all those supported 7-year software. And then you need to have a very crazy prioritization in order to start moving right away. So what we did next was basically we were assessing where you are. And then comes my favorite, step number 3, and this is what we actually had to learn the hard way. So I have a really supportive board, and basically they were asking us to set up the security program so we will be on our road to SaaS. And then we figured out the budget, and it's like, hey, here's the budget. Let's do it. I did not need to fight for the money. They just told me they trust me. But then we went to a board meeting and told them, okay, the next step is to train everybody on security, and it will take 1 hour of each employee's time. And the board was, can it be shorter? Like 1 hour of every employee's time? I made a calculation for the car previously, but then it was like, it was hard. And then they also asked, like, is it really mandatory for everyone? And we started to ask, like, yeah, and can we fire anyone who doesn't comply? Because they won't be able to do their job if they cannot have access to the data, right? So after that, we didn't know what to do because the sentiment from the board was that security is important, but we should solve it in a way that we don't affect everybody's life. So then what we did, we launched a phishing campaign. We obtained login from the Hungarian financial admin. Remember, I was the general manager for the Hungarian office by that time. And then we have sent an email to our parents' company that the bank account has changed to a new number. It seemed to be a totally valid email. And with that, we also sent a fake invoice. You can see this was the fake invoice. And this is like 300,000 euros. It's 100 million forints for Hungarians. And here is the response for changing the bank account number. We have just sent an email that, can you please update? And they said, yes, we could update this. And then we had to wait patiently. After some time, I got a little bit nervous because, I think the tax authority would be very curious about the 100 million forints which might get on my personal bank account because we use that for the testing. So then I started to ask. I was the GM. This is why it was important. And I started to ask questions from the finance, like, hey, when do we get the money? When do we get the money? And I figured the exact day. And it turned out that they accepted the fake invoice. But then the stakes became really high because we also sent a real invoice at the same time. So actually, they wanted to transfer us 600,000 euros in just one payment. So I realized when this was happening, so I actually called the finance admin. It's like, okay, so are you ready to transfer the money to us? He said, yes. There are no more checks. You just push the approve button, yet, right? Yes. Stop. Don't do that. So we had to tell them, and they were immediately interested in what to do. But then we also did several other red teaming exercises, and we don't have time to talk about it because it has a lot of slides. Actually, we reviewed it yesterday. But we presented this to the board, and then we got everything approved. This totally changed the board's mind because now they were listening to us and they understood what we need to do. Just to let everybody know, the solutions were on the way. So we could actually hack into the finance admin's account because multi-factor authentication was not mandatory, and they did not enable multi-factor authentication, so we could enforce it. Now we are working on FIDO2, and I also want to show the sentiment, how it changed, that now we are working on passkey implementation. So we are actually changed from being behind by 3 years in security. Now we are able to implement the future. So I'm really happy to see that. But then we also still had to execute the training. We had to train everyone. It was really hard to go through the training. We had to work with HR to get everybody finishing. We actually had to send warning emails. It was a huge Excel magic to integrate all the systems. We even had an SSO bug, and by mistake we notified everybody. It was like a crazy thing. So how can we solve this? So next year we were smarter because we have learned. We have showed the red teaming exercises to everyone in the company. What happened next? 93% automatic completion rate. 93% of our company did the security training by just sending them an email and a notification. No warnings, no HR involved. They just finished the training. You can imagine how awesome it is. And then after we sent out the email, I just only had to worry about 20 people in the company who haven't finished. So one of the most important things is that I would like to recommend everybody to do red teaming and then share the results with the team, because that will make a huge difference in how people think about security. So the step 4 is that we have actually 3 pillars. We have the employees, processes, and assets. But if you want to make changes in the first 2, then you need to actually talk and work with other departments to find their wins. So for us, privacy was actually a key. So we take GDPR, LGPD, and all the privacy laws very seriously. So our cloud is actually set up in a way that any company can do, and their lawyers cannot really say anything bad about our system. And we actually took privacy as a first priority. I spent days asking about all the differences between what is the pseudo-anonymized data, and I still cannot say that word, and what is the anonymized data, and discussing what encryption means to these things. And then we actually developed training together. We went so far that people started to actually mix privacy with security, and then they started to ask privacy questions from me. So I became almost like a privacy SME in the company, although I have no legal degree. What was really useful here is that privacy saw that we are pushing their cause, but then for us, legal teams started to push security projects. And you know, if lawyers are pushing something, that people will take that seriously. So that was a huge win for us. HR was a big thing because we have to have background checks. For example, for certifications, we had to make complex employment changes in order to comply with all the rules. And we had to figure out what to do with non-compliance. So the win-win was that we started to involve HR early in the process, and we gave them veto rights. What it meant was that they could come back to us and say, no, this cannot be done, but we always found a way to actually implement things. And it also helped them to actually centralize things, because we have 24 offices worldwide, and to have the same rules apply everyone. And then for sales, certifications were key. Before we had the ISO, SOC 2, and other certifications applicable for our SaaS service, sales came to us with every security questionnaire. You can imagine these huge companies have huge questionnaires, and we spent all of our time answering all those questions. But with this, we have less questions, and everybody is happier, and then we have the win-win scenario. And I want to say that look for the win-win for all the other departments. Step number 5, and this is where I will talk a little bit about the technical challenges which we have. So from now on, we actually are running SaaS. We are responsible for the application uptime. We are a platform, and we are working with big corporations around the world, and we actually don't know who is targeting them, why, and when. So for us, we actually had to figure out how to do proper DDoS protection. And actually, this is how I explained these things for sales. Basically, we had to use an AI-based DDoS detection, because otherwise we would not be able to prevent things from happening. But then it was not obvious, because this also cannot pick up things like we have a site. It's a huge company, world's leading company in one of the industries. And then Chinese crawlers are basically attacking their pages. They figured out which are the slow pages, and they are constantly coming, and there is no pattern. There's no pattern because they are constantly changing everything, the IPs and everything. And we have threat intelligence, and none of the databases contain their IP addresses. So all of these information are really hard to process. And then my next other favorite topic is that ransomware protection is not a solved problem nowadays. And not just for making the data public, because if you want to avoid making the data public, you need to be strong everywhere in security, basically. But then just to make sure that your backups are safe, that's also not a solved problem. We use the world's one of the leading cloud providers, and we are a huge account because we are actually paying for all those customers' cloud usage. We are working directly with the product managers, And actually, we were trying to find a solution where we could delegate securing the files from being encrypted by ransomware. So, first step, right? Put a retention policy on backups. So people cannot delete, they cannot modify the files. But then, what if somebody deletes that policy because they have a malware on one of our admin's computer, and then they delete the policy? Then they can delete the file, or they can delete the whole project, and then we have no backups. Then they recommended that we can create a lien to protect the project from being deleted. And then we asked, who will make sure that the lien cannot be deleted? And then they don't have an answer. They don't have an answer for this question, and they actually recommend set up an account which is air-gapped separately, but it's extremely hard to set this up, especially if you don't want to lock yourself out. So my key takeaways from these technical points is that prepared that there are no answers for all of your questions. Even though you get all these emails with solutions for everything, there are gaps which you will need to figure out a smart way to solve. Step number 6 helped us to go live. Security is complicated. You know, there's the DevSecOps maturity model. You will never be perfect. Let me know if somebody has a perfect score on this and can do all the check marks, but you will never be perfect. And then no matter how you actually prioritize, you will have actually some things which you will always need to create in the future. The attackers are ahead of us. I have seen these presentations before me, and I was starting to sweat. Like somebody was like, oh, and then I have a 0-day about the Java application. It's like, oh, don't be Liferay, please. So you need to be really strong and make the right decisions. When can you go forward? Because it will never be perfect. And what we did is that we took a risk-based approach. Basically, we actually had asked everybody in the company, not just security, we asked everybody in the company to raise their risks, which they think would cause problems for our SaaS application. And then we have defined probability and severity, and then we put them into categories. What we found is that it was important that the severity goes in an exponential scale. Otherwise, you won't be able to choose the right things well, so you can see the scores there. And after this, we called the board again, and we went through, and basically we showed them, and we made a conscious decision together about which risks which we are taking and going live, and which risks which we won't take. This is not our risk model, so don't look into the colors. This was how we have explained to the board how we will do this approach. So this, I really made sure that we are not using the right and the correct one. So step 6 is use a risk-based approach. And then the step 7 is just a very easy one. And I do think that you need to use the whole world to find the right talent. So we have a very small team, but they are all around the world. Not right now, because actually half of the team is sitting here in the first row. Not exactly the half, but most of us. And actually, we were interviewed at the last Hacktivity by Audrey, because we were actually working really hard to convince her to join. So I'm really thankful for Hacktivity, actually, to organizing this conference and letting us talk about these things and building connections. But I wanted to emphasize that build an awesome team by focusing on everybody's strength. And then closing, I wanted to emphasize the points again. So run incident management processes and start having incidents. It's a really good, fun exercise, actually, to learn, and you actually have to teach people on how to manage incidents. Then you can review quickly where you are, but then you cannot wait until you completely finish and understand the whole thing, because it is too complex. You need to actually start doing things right away. You need to challenge yourself, and you need to challenge the company, be honest about the mistakes, or not mistakes, but the problems which you have right now, and actually share it with everybody, because they will be able to help you better. All of the other departments are your friends. Find win-wins. Understand what are their wins, and then you will win together with them. And of course, you need to do this stuff. You actually need to do all the security. You need to think through what you can do, and then implement it as soon as possible. And then you need to actually make sure that you choose the right things to work on after you have done the most simple stuff first. But then the seventh step is that make sure that your whole company is your security team, and everybody in the company is your friend, and never forget that. Thank you.
Thank you, Zsolt. Pretty positive presentation to the challenges you've faced in your business. That concludes the afternoon session. If there are any questions for Zsolt, please raise your hands, or anybody online can also write questions on Discord. Anybody? We have a question.
Hello, my name is Miklos. You mentioned that the 1 hour that deemed too much of every employee's time before the internal phishing campaign was too much, but after the internal phishing campaign, you presented it to the boards, and you told me about several things that were approved by the board. So how, in cost or in number of hours, how much did you get approved per every employee's time, or in dollars or euros?
I have not converted it to dollars or euros because it doesn't show up in any budget. So the time of the employees of doing security is unfortunately not showing up, so you don't measure and nobody sees. What was happening is that we actually started to get the support from the board on executing the 1 hour long training. So actually we went through the training, the 1 hour long training, and actually we did even more. We started to provide more and more content as well. Like, for example, we included our red teaming presentation next year after the security training. So if somebody was interested, and a lot of people were interested, they actually took it as an extra. And actually, it made the whole company more secure. In the previous presentation, they were talking about it, like show the results, because people will be more security conscious if they are seeing the problems which their behavior might cause in security and also financially for the company. Thank you.
You mentioned consciousness of employees and other metrics for ROI. I wonder, do you have any means of measuring the security posture of the company except for humans evaluating what is critical and what is frequent or not?
So the security posture of the company, it's a complex and hard question, to be honest, but thanks for asking. So because everybody's went through the training, we could actually be certified, and that's one thing. We continuously do our red teaming exercises, and we are reporting less of these issues. We are asking third-party companies to do auditing, mostly our systems, but so soon I think we will need to also audit the processes and the procedures which we are having, besides the regular SOC 2 and, well, we disappeared, SOC 2 and ISO certifications.
Anybody else?
Since you really emphasize the red teaming aspect of security, what's your experience and opinion about building a purple team or operating it?
Building a red team?
A purple team.
Purple team. we actually do have a purple team. So you can talk to the purple team leader because he's in front of you. Oh, and so actually the whole, not whole purple team, but the purple team is actually sitting there, some parts. So I was lucky because when I started on the information security, basically we had the teams in place, more or less. It's just that it was not meant for SaaS yet. And then we actually had to transform ourselves together from a traditional software company to a SaaS company, which brought all these challenges which we were facing.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think that's it, Jolt. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.